We
In
do
any
have a quorum.
case,
I'm starting the live stream.
all right, it is 12:31 on April 19, 2024. I'm calling to order this meeting
I'm
of
starting
the.
the.
I received a master's degree in.
Mr. McDermott, we're getting the sounds of your YouTube coming across the feed.
It should be over now. Is it still happening?
No, that sounds fine.
Okay.
So once again, I am calling to order this meeting, the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office Oversight Committee. I have checked the members in attendance, which I know Mr. McDermott will make note of. I do find that we have a quorum, and we are ready to proceed. Our first meaningful item on the agenda is the Chief's report. Mr. McDermott.
Thank you, Judge. I have 1 second as I get back on the screen. I have sent a written report. I'm not intending right now because of the agenda length to cover everything that I wrote in the report. There are some things that I'll start with that I missed. In the past year, we have done 2 trials. One of those trials actually resolved 4 cases in felony court in Jeff Davis County. And we are working on the appeals from that. The workload sort of is a summary over the past year. Also admitting people as I'm talking, Judge, I'm sorry. As the workload of the past year, as you all know, when I was here last year talking about the budget, functionally we had Paul and me being the lawyers. We were here talking about adding staff. In the meantime, we lost the law grad who was studying for the bar exam. As soon as she left, as soon as she passed the bar exam, she decided to leave us and move to a city, which was not the most fun outcome for me of the investment that we made in her. We lost a social worker, or both 2 social workers in the past 9 months. We have replaced one, we are replacing the other one. The additional staffing that you all gave us in the past, as we anticipated last year, filling those positions would be difficult. And it was, but I decided instead of filling them with felony qualified lawyers for 2 of them, that we got a lot of interest from law students who wanted to come here after they graduated. And so now we have next month 3 lawyers or law grads who will be finishing and starting with us. They will be coming with supervised bar cards, so able to appear in court. We're really excited about having them. In the meantime, we also hired Phil Baker, who's a 30-year experienced lawyer. He has given us some immediate relief. Number one, the case closings over the summer and into the early fall, as I anticipated because of our staffing at this point last year, were slow. Starting in October, we had immediate effect in being able to work through cases, getting resolution, getting dismissals, getting pleas done. Just in the past month, well, we've had an appeal from Jeff Davis due and a jury trial that we're getting ready to do our first jury trial in Hudspeth County, as at the end of this month in the 394th. Phil is working on both the appeal and that trial, which has allowed Paul and me in an unprecedented moment to be able to continue working dockets, being prepared for dockets, working for this board meeting, working on the budgets, working on the data collection for TIDC. A year ago, there would have been a breaking point for all of that. And because of Phil's immediate effect, we've been able to address those and keep everything moving. The new lawyers who are coming are incredibly excited to be here. One of them has started working remotely already. She is going to appear in front of Judge Dominguez next Thursday to do some bond hearings by Zoom. I know for a fact that she's incredibly nervous for this, but I thought that Judge Dominguez would be a fine and safe place for a first appearance by a young lawyer, and and she actually, I'll take that back. She doesn't know yet that she's doing these hearings. I also want to apologize before we start that Paul is not here today for this meeting. Paul's stepson is starting college tours to look for graduating high school in a year. I want to make sure I definitively report to the board that the kid is right now going to visit Oklahoma, and I'm inviting everybody to judge accordingly. Yes. And so for everybody who thinks that Paul is their person, I want them to know, be very clear that Paul's child is looking at Oklahoma. So it's been an exciting year. I promised y'all last year that if we did the budget and staffing adjustments that we needed, that even if we were not immediately able to fill those positions, that we would be taking cases and moving forward as according to schedule and with all diligence. I think we have delivered that. It has been hard. I still continue to work probably every weekend to make sure that's happening. I'm looking forward to a day here in the near future where that will no longer be the case. But there is a lot of other information I gave in the board report that was written. A good sections of that involve agenda items that are going to be coming up and be discussed more fully. I'm open to, let me mention the budget and finances. We did go over a little bit in the core grant last year. I've worked with the Edwin Colfax, who is here, to talk about money that we expect not to spend in this fiscal year to be able to cover that overage, so as to not do any adjustments at this point. And we'll be able to look at that more closely as we get closer to the end of this fiscal year. But I think that will be done. I have proposed a budget that, of course, we'll be talking about today. And what else did I want to say? I think that might be it. I'm open for any questions or comments.
Any questions for the chief? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. McDermott. Moving on, number 4, the discussion regarding expansion of the program to Val Verde and Terrell counties. Mr. McDermott.
Yes, I will say, first of all, that this agenda item and the budget agenda item sort of go hand in hand. Decisions on one affect decision on the other. There have been discussions. If y'all remember, I actually started my career in Del Rio. We have some visitors here today. David Martinez, who is the county attorney, is here with his video on, and Judge Cadena, who's the district court judge for the 83rd Judicial District, which reaches from Val Verde County to Pecos County through Terrell. The Val Verde expansion, just as a threshold, would also include Terrell County. The Terrell County judge is not here with us today, but I've had several conversations with her, as well as I believe Judge Cadena has as well. The discussions I've been having with Val Verde started many years ago, very informally, started as a conversation about how could I help them move forward, even if that didn't involve me. I have some affection towards Val Verde County and would like to see good things happen there. There was, I think, in their minds for many years, some adequate representation. And that has changed. I think in the last couple of years, the conversations with Val Verde ramped up. And I remember the moment in the hotel lobby in Austin when Judge Cadena and I started talking about this. They have similar problems now with a little different flavor than I believe our district had 7 or 8 years ago. A lack of lawyers. They do have a local bar that is shrinking, and the number of lawyers in the local bar who are willing to take cases and can handle their cases is that number of those lawyers is decreasing. David Ortiz is actually one of those lawyers, and he's on our board. They are being serviced for their court appointments mainly by lawyers from Eagle Pass now. And my understanding from extensive conversations in both the county court at law and in the district courts is the lawyers often do not come to court when they come late, they come bringing other, or handling each other's cases and not moving their cases. I believe that Valverde is interested and ready to look in a different direction. And we've had discussions about budget. I had a meeting down in Valverde County with both district court judges, the county court at law judge, the county attorney, and the county auditor, to look at what we proposed as a budget for Valverde and Terrell counties. It looked like it had some solid progress in that meeting. We were scheduled to do a presentation at Commissioner's Court on the issue. Commissioner's Court had reviewed our materials, had talked to the interested parties and stakeholders before we got there, and had a unanimous vote a month ago to continue the conversation and work out the budget and work on the grant application. A year ago, I believe, when I first mentioned this, and there was a unanimous vote in favor of it. And so that's where we are now. Grants and the renewal of this grant that we currently are under and any additions are due into TIDC on May 10th for their June board meeting. I have discussed those issues with Mr. Colfax and Mr. Ehlers as well. A year ago, I think when we started these conversations, Judge Dominguez, his main concern that you voiced at that meeting was that any additional counties would not decrease or affect the services that are available to the 5 counties that we're currently serving. And so the budget and proposed staffing that we built kept that forefront in our minds. Paul and I did a lot of work to build up a model down there that would not involve changing the services provided up here, that would not involve going to them in 3 or 4 years with the kind of tough conversation that we had up here last year. Adding Valverde would involve having another office. It is 3 hours away from our current office. That reminds me, that is the one thing I missed in my chief's report, is we did move into our building. Thank you. And so we've built up a staffing model down there, including a new office. The idea that we're working with right now that's not set in stone is that Paul is looking for the opportunity to build something under the umbrella, and Paul is interested in spending most of his time for the next 2 or 3 years in Del Rio, helping to build this with my supervision and support and direction and my involvement as well. We did a model of staffing that we thought was based on numbers in a similar analysis that we did last year for y'all. That staffing model got positive reception from the judges and from the Commissioner's Court down there. Adding Del Rio, we knew that this year there were going to be cost increase for the counties up here. We knew because of the rent and cleaning costs that were going to be involved. We knew that because of COLAs, we knew because of the adjustments that need to be made to the calculation of health insurance and to TCRS, that there were going to be cost increases. One of the things I tried to keep in mind was how to mitigate the cost increases to the current counties with an expansion. We knew there is no model that would involve expanding to Valverde and Terrell counties that would involve increasing costs overall based on projections to the 5 counties. For Valverde, we have already 2 people that are interested in working there, in addition to Paul spending a lot of time there. We have one former summer law clerk who has already committed that if we expanded to Valverde, that he was ready to move there on October 1st. And we have just 2 days ago, I received an email from a law student who is graduating this summer, who would like to start as well, and start there in Valverde County. If we look at the budgets that I proposed, those are on pages 14 and 15 of your meeting book. The first page 14 is what the tri-county budget would, or the current district budget would look like without Del Rio proceeding as is, with the cost adjustments that we were already expecting and knew 6 months and a year ago. And those, including the rent, which the rent we knew, and we had lots of talks about last fall about how that would affect. And so those increases are reflected on page 14. I will note as a side note there that every salary is a COLA. Adrian Hinojos, who's the county treasurer for Culberson County, who's present at this meeting, had suggested that I use a 5% COLA based on the historical averages from Culberson County. That has not been set yet. That number could be different, but that's our anticipated sort of benchmark or placeholder for COLAs. The one salary that I was suggesting to deviate from that is the investigator one position. It's also labeled chief of staff. That position is being held by Connie Santian. In my actual evaluation of her job and her job performance as it's developed, is she is more valuable and does more work for me than a first-year lawyer is capable of. She is managing the non-attorney staff. She is basically screening cases. She has taught herself charging practice and is reviewing indictments and bringing them to the lawyers with her comments about what she thinks is right and wrong about the indictments. She is working with clients on waivers of arraignment, making sure they understand their rights. She knows everything about every case that comes through this office up here. And so knowing that, I thought I needed to suggest that she deserved a merit increase. Her work is day to day. She was out yesterday and I was barely able to function. It got done, but barely able to function. And so that was the suggestion there. Page 15 is what the numbers look like for the current 5 counties. If we add Del Rio and Valverde, and that the difference is because of cost sharing and salaries for me and Paul and Connie, while adding a lawyer here to make up the time that would be missed for Paul and me, my sort of decrease in time availability. I would need to be spending a lot of time working money, data, human resources, supervision. So those are what the numbers would look like. They're more than 5% increases for Paul, May, and Connie because of increased workload, but that's the suggestion, this budget that is also reflected in the budget that we submitted to Valverde County. The budget for Valverde County looks substantially similar to this with some unknowns about rent and other costs. But staffing would basically be a mirror of what the staffing is up here and administrative costs shared across the programs. And then keeping a lawyer on the ARPA grant with money that's still unspent. And that's page 16. And those are the 3 issues, I think, right now. And I don't know.
All right, so Mr. McDermott, should we invite Judge Cadena and Mr. Martinez if they want to say anything?
That's what I was just going to suggest, Judge.
All right, Judge Cadena, why don't we start with you if you want to address the group? And welcome, it's good to see you.
Well, we don't control the purse strings, so James knows that everything that he proposes is going to have to be run through Commissioner's Court. We will. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it happen. We have another dynamic that is probably. I mean, I think it's fixing to come online pretty soon. We just had another federal district judge approved for Del Rio, and I'm fixing to go have lunch with him. So I think that's going to tighten up the attorneys available to service the state court. So it's another reason why we believe this should happen. We would like for it to happen. I think we're going to end up having 2 federal courts that are fully functional and have the same pool of lawyers. And I think they have more of a draw in terms of, I think, compensation. And that's just the reality that we're faced with now. Haven't had any problem with the lawyers functioning the time that I've been here, over the course of 11 plus years, but things change, and we're going to have to adapt to that change. And Mr. Martinez, I would welcome any comments you may have as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Judge Cadena and Judge Ferguson and Mr. McDermott, certainly for the invitation, and members of the board. I was hopeful that Judge Owens, our county judge, would be in attendance today. He has been actively participating in many of the meetings that Mr. McDermott and I have had, and I can represent to the court, to this board rather, that Judge Owens shares very many of the same sentiments that Judge Cadena just echoed. Concerns with the current pool of lawyers that are available, and knowing that those numbers are going to be probably pulled even thinner with the new federal district judge that will be coming on board here pretty soon. All that being said, in addition to that, I know that last month, Mr. McDermott and Paul were both present for a commissioners court meeting. They were prepared to make a presentation, but based on the information that they had already prepared and presented to the court basically gave, the commissioners court here gave green light for and authorized the pursuit of a grant for the Far West Texas Regional Public Defender Office, potentially expanding into Del Rio. So clearly, and it was on a 5-0 vote. So it was a unanimous vote. There appears to be a lot of support and excitement and anticipation that the expansion occurs. Obviously, all based on the award of a grant. But that basically sums up the comments that I would have.
Judge, just so that the board is aware, I think that in this past year, we have missed court or were late for court twice in the past year. One was with Judge McKenzie, and the docket that was prepared so that court started 11:30, but that was a glitch in the new iDocket system, which I think every judge here is experiencing the problems with the iDocket docket printing. And docket actually started at 10. I don't think any private lawyer showed up for that docket either on time. And then we missed a bond docket with Judge Dominguez about a month ago. And I was very upset. And then that it was possible that we missed it. I think I found out that the docket was happening because I happened to be texting Judge Dominguez about another issue, and he asked me why I wasn't on court. And the answer was that the clerk's office had forgotten to send us notice of the docket. And I am not one to throw Mr. Seymour, the clerk in Hudspeth County, under the bus. But Mr. Seymour called me apologizing. And my promise to all of you has been that we show up on time, and we show up every time. And every time that we miss court, which has been 2 now in 7 years, causes me immense amount of anxiety. I went and watched Judge Cadena's court in Valverde County, and he started docket at 9 o'clock in the morning, and it seemed to me about half of the lawyers showed up after 2:30. That's not the kind of lawyering that I have tried to give each of y'all, and that's certainly not the kind of lawyering I would want to give in any expansion. I also don't want to change that for y'all. My commitment has been that we would be there, and my commitment is always that we are going to be there. You will have announcements on all of your cases, and we will be prepared. The difference in the 2 budgets for the counties, I think, for the county contributions are about a $20,000 difference for Brewster County, For Culberson County, the difference is about $5,000. For Jeff Davis County, the difference is about $4,000. It looks like for Hudspeth County, the difference is about $8,000. And Presidio County, the difference is about $7,000. And so it would be, the difference is it would be a little more expensive without Valverde. We would save money by adding Valverde. We've also built caseload standards into the discussions that we've been having with Valverde. We would not go in and take 100% of cases to start. We would take cases proportionate to our ability to take them based on the staffing. We are also limiting, I know that all of you are aware of the issues that have been going on the border, and Eagle Pass and Valverde County have been in the news quite a bit. Our proposal on those issues, our proposal to Valverde County is that we would only take non-OLS adult felonies and misdemeanors.
Why don't you explain what OLS is in case there's anyone in here who doesn't?
Understood. Operation Lone Star, the program started through the governor's office, increasing monitoring arrests and charges at the border through border crossings. We've seen some of those cases up here and the increase of smuggling charges that were virtually non-existent at some point. When I started here, there are, if you've watched the news over the last couple of years, those cases have been exploding in the region down the river in Valverde and Maverick counties. Those arrests are done through special grants and are prosecuted through special grants. Valverde County monitors and labels those cases as they come in through intake. I believe Judge Cadena's wife is actually works at the jail for the sheriff's department and does a lot of the work in getting the cases into CJIS and monitoring those arrests. They are easy to identify at arrest as an OLS case through the governor's program, rather than a normal sort of what we would expect through the normal caseloads that come. There has been money through the governor's office, I think funneled through TIDC. I don't exactly know how that works, but TIDC has had money to address OLS cases. Those are covered 100% through those funds. In Valverde County, it's done through, I think, the Lubbock Private Defender, if I'm not mistaken. Those cases are identified at arrest. Our grant proposal would not include any of those cases. Also, I know from my own history that juvenile work, if it has got any volume, is very labor intensive. And so the proposal that we started for Valverde County excluded juvenile cases for now. It would be too difficult for us to start up a program and be able to adequately manage incoming caseloads and also deal with the time demands that juvenile cases have. I'm sure all of you are aware that juvenile cases have, at the minimum, if the juvenile is detained, a hearing every 10 business days. We couldn't keep up with that and build a program. And so the goal here would to build a program in a manageable way.
All right. Thank you, Chief.
I'll say one more thing for these budgets. For either one of them, those include what has currently been set by TIDC board at the funding level for sustainability at 2/3 funding by the state. And so that number is reflected, and that's how the county contributions were reflected in each of these budgets.
Thank you, Chief. I do want to mention a little history. We have a lot of faces here that weren't here when the department was created. Edwin was a big part of that, but I see he hasn't joined us today. But Judge Dominguez and I share two of the largest counties. Oh, there you are. Thank you, Edwin. The first face, the first person I talked to on day one when this started. Judge Dominguez and I have two counties, the two of the biggest counties in the state. They're enormous. Neither one of them has a single lawyer living in them to represent criminal defendants. Since Saul Thomas died, those of you who remember Saul, he's a legend. Since he passed away, we haven't had a single lawyer in those two counties. I have two other of the largest counties in the state who have one lawyer each. One of those splits his time 50% with the valley and 50% in the county. And the remaining county might have two. I don't know that we have two who are first degree qualified under the plan, but we do, I think, have two. The reason that the department got created was because that has essentially always been the way. We've had lawyers willing to come from out of town in a pinch. But one thing that these gentlemen from the TIDC have unfortunately made clear to me is that we cannot conscript. So if we ask a lawyer to take a case and they refuse, we cannot force them to do so, which was an unfortunate answer for all of us judges to hear, not what we wanted to hear. But what that meant was we did not have lawyers to handle our cases. And so we created the department. Judge Cadena will remember the reason I give you that history is because I opposed this the first many, many times that Mr. McDermott brought it to my attention, because I wanted to make sure that we had sufficient representation from them to cover all of our cases. I will tell you for the last several years, Presidio, Jeff Davis, and Brewster County dockets, well, two of those have been zeroed out. Case comes in and it's disposed. No cases carried forward. In Brewster County, our docket is minimal and it is current. There is no backlog in any of those counties. So when they approached me again with this idea, I reevaluated and decided not only would I withdraw my objection, but I would give it my support. Judge Cadena is now experiencing what we were experiencing when I created this department in the first place. I recognize his frustration. There's one additional thing I want to point out that all of us need to be keeping in mind as we talk about budget. When the department, when I took the bench back in 2012, in the Tri-County area, the going rate for practicing attorneys, not appointed, but in the private practice, was between $200 and $250. And I think we have one lawyer who was charging $300, but everybody laughed about it. So that was the going rate we were competing with in the private market for appointments. The amount that we pay in appointments has gone up $25 an hour. I raised it up to $100 an hour several years back. Didn't make a difference. However, the local market in our counties now has gone from 250 to 350 or 450. Just last week, one of the local lawyers we're talking about, one of the few that I have, billed $450 an hour on a case. So they have doubled the amount of money that they're making, and we've increased our offer for private appointments by $25 an hour. Without, in Judge Cadena's court and these other counties, without the public defender, y'all are going to be trying to find lawyers willing to come in, and you're going to be paying a lot more than $100 an hour, or you're going to be violating the due process rights of your criminal defendants. Because the lawyers that are from out of town are not coming in for court. They're not seeing their clients within 24 hours. They'll come to court and the defendant will stand up and say, I haven't heard from my lawyer since last time we were in court. It happens all the time because out of town lawyers are busy in the cities. They do this as a favor, but they're not doing a favor for the defendants. So there's a real pinch right now. And all of West Texas has expanded into the legal desert, both heading east and heading north. We're dealing with that in Austin. We're recruiting now at law schools. We're pitching rural practice everywhere we can. And it's a struggle because the amount of money that's out there for them now is great. And our counties can't pay $225 an hour for court appointments. They just can't do it. So that's kind of the situation. That's what changed my opinion is I can't in good conscience tell Judge Cadena that he can't have what we created when he's in the same boat that we're in. So that was that. Judge Henderson, I saw that you unmuted. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I've got a couple of questions, Mr. McDermott, about the budget, just real quick.
Yes.
On the Del Rio side, is there any additional occupancy costs by being in Del Rio? What are you doing for occupancy there?
That was built into the budget down there. There is rent. We have a separate office down there. The discussions that we had with Valverde involved an entire budget that included rent. We would not be, except for Paul and me, we would not be using staff between the two offices. The only minor exception for that would be there are fewer, I think, than 10 felony cases in Terrell County a year. It looked like to me, and it looked like if there were conflicts, we would be able to cover those from either county, but otherwise there would not be overlap. So except for Paul and me and some work from Connie, the budget for Val Verde is built to be fairly standalone and separate from this budget.
Okay. Clarify something for me. Last year, I know that you went to Austin and talked to the TIDC about getting some assistance on the rent, specifically because we knew we were moving you guys to a newer, bigger offices. I don't remember how that turned out. How did that turn out?
That is included in this new budget under the what is our effective reimbursement rate of 69%. So if you look, for example, at the as is budget on page 14 and go down to, where did I include it? There's a rent and cleaning line items down towards the bottom of the page. And those are included in the total budget and included in the total for the total reimbursement. And that's why the county contributions also include that. But
Right.
that
So
rent is included in there.
but the budget sort of floats. So it's consistent between the two numbers. It's 70%. So as expenses rise, TIDC's share rises with it.
That's
If there's
correct.
nothing additional, I was kind of hoping that we would see maybe some additional support from TIDC, and I would ask our colleagues from that, is there any room? I mean, I'm looking at, without Del Rio, we're looking at a 28% increase in costs associated with the county, or about $105,000. Is there any opportunity to get more than 70% for the rural counties, which are struggling with budgets all the time? Is that a possibility? Or even if you guys could do the rent and make that a fixed number or a floating number, depending on what rent's doing, that would shave off $90,000 of the $105,000 increase. Clearly, I'm going to struggle convincing my court that we went from 85 to 168 last year, and that was a struggle. And now we're going to go to 216. We've got the lion's share of the budget in Brewster County, and rightly so. We have the lion's share of the cases. But is there any room, Scott, for a little help on the percentages, or maybe just on the rent?
Well, what I usually say to questions like this is you can always ask, and we can present it to the board, and the board, has ultimate decision-making authority. Y'all, you are, beyond our usual. We usually cover, 66%, and you're above that as it is. I think in terms of making the case, I think it really kind of comes back to, your county budgets. You're in a particularly difficult situation, maybe compared to other counties. You have relatively more cases compared to your, tax base and population because of your proximity to the border and checkpoints and all of that, like, feeds in more cases to these offices. So I think you have a case to be made to the board as to why your expenses exceed, most others, and you're situated in such a way that, your county tax base, is lower arguably than others as well. So, between those things, that's what I would suggest in terms of trying to make the case. I can't really speak for the board. I can only really kind of speak to like what the standard policy is, right? And at the same time, you can also come in and ask for more based on your particular circumstances.
That may be something we want to consider. The Judge Portillo, Judge McKenzie, Judge Evans, and myself might make a road trip to Austin to have that discussion. I appreciate your willingness to let us at least throw that out. I think we've got to find, I mean, clearly this is, I mean, I agree with Judge Ferguson in that the thing I get the most from my colleagues on the court is, well, why don't we just hire our own outside attorney, right? That's a simple process, but they're not, and it's probably worth, Mr. McDermott, you and I sitting down and building some numbers, because at $450 an hour, as Judge Ferguson said, or even $300 an hour, plus travel expenses, it's going to get awfully expensive very fast. And so it's not as simple as let's just hire our local attorneys, assuming that even the local attorneys would do it on top of their existing caseloads. So why don't Judge Portillo and Judge Evans and I and Judge McKenzie get together, and when's your next meeting in Austin?
So the next board meeting, it's going to be either June 29th or 30th are the dates that we're looking at. It has not been set yet, but it should be one of those two.
And we would be free to come, or we'd be free to come and present our case.
Sure, you could present in person. Our meetings are hybrid, so you could even Zoom in if you wanted to as well.
Okay. I don't have anything else, Mr. McDermott. Those are my questions.
Judge, if I can say two things to you as well, or actually three things. Number one, with Del Rio, that was part of the mitigation I tried to do. The county share would go up a less amount. It would go up $20,000 less to $196,000. Second, I think the vehicle for making that request is for me to build it into the grant application, reapplication form, and so that it is in the grant renewal that is presented to TIDC, and that I think gives, the platform for which y'all can speak to it instead of just generically saying we want to talk in public comment. And so I will work with you to build that in. I think that last year in the long board reports that we had, what I was attempting to do is to take the caseloads that we had and build them out at an hourly rate of $100 an hour, which is what the courts were paying to appointed counsel. The numbers I sent you last year, I think, would be substantially the same this year. Private attorneys would be then 4 times the numbers that I gave you last year. And so we can certainly work on that, but that was what we tried to do last year with the board report when we were doing the staffing issue, was to try and model out what would our caseload cost if appointed to the private bar, if the private bar even existed. And that was also part of the discussion. But I believe last year, if I remember the numbers correctly, that our caseload for Brewster County was something like $1.5 or $1.6 million. And we'd gotten about $800,000 or $900,000 worth of cases just in the previous 12 months. So, and lastly, the one thing I'd like to say is that Judge Hennington asked me in a conversation 2 months ago, why would I want to take on this extra work with Valverde? And the answer is that my goal here is long-term stability and cost stability and personnel stability for the program. And having this addition allows me the room that if somebody quits, that we are not stuck, that there are ways to move people around. There are ways to give people an opportunity for growth in their careers, which helps with retention, and being able to move people between offices and move them up in responsibility is a thing that helps me with long-term stability. I believe it will also give some longer-term stability for the finances of the program and better projections for the future for the counties.
I know we need to address this issue and the budget issue before 1:30, because I think we have some judges that are stepping off the 1:30 dockets. So let's address the issue of number 4, the expansion of the program. Obviously, we cannot send the program into those counties. What I think we could do, if there's a motion and the group wishes to do so, would be to authorize, to basically give sort of a pre-stamp of approval to the concept. And if we've seen the numbers, he's talked to us about what it'll mean for our counties and our courts. I think the appropriate issue is if those counties vote to implement and join the interlocal agreements as part of the public defender's office, that we would permit and approve the entry. Mr. McDermott, is that anything like what you had in mind?
Yes, sir.
All right. So at this point on number 4, I will entertain any motion that anyone wishes to make.
I will make the motion that the Far West Texas Public Defender's Office allow the implementation of the program into Terrell and Valverde counties.
I have a
Second.
motion by Judge Evans and a second by Judge Dominguez. Do we have any further discussion before I call for the vote? Hearing no further discussion, I'm going to ask all those in favor to raise their hand and hold it up so that I can count and say aye.
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 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 8 ayes. You may lower your hands. All those opposed, raise your hand and say nay. Hearing none, the vote passes 8-0. Thank you. Let's jump ahead to the budget.
Judge,
I
I
think
think that meant that Mr. Ehlers was abstaining. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, any abstentions?
Please put me down as an abstention.
All right, any other abstentions? Thank you for that, Mr. McDermott.
Thank you all. I gotta go. Appreciate the consideration. We'll let you know how it goes.
Good luck, Judge Cadena.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Martinez, you as well.
See you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's address the budget. Mr. McDermott, now that this has been approved, how do you wish for this to be presented to the group for vote? We can't just vote on the second one because we don't know that those counties are going to join us. So do you have a springing vote in mind?
I need to be able to go to TIDC in June as part of the grants I need to file in May, to say that I have support for either of these budgets. Because TIDC, the TIDC board, when they look at the grant renewal and the grant expansion, their first question and Edwin's first response is going to be whether we've got support already done.
So
Is that
you want
correct?
the second one approved, but you would operate under the current budget, and then this modified after the rollover of the fiscal year until one of those counties joins.
So it would be approval for page 15 if everything worked through, and 14 if it didn't.
So it's 14 unless and until the counties join, in which case it springs to 15.
Yes, sir.
All right. I will entertain any motion anyone wishes to make at this time on the budget item. I hear no motions, Mr. McDermott. Judge Dominguez?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to word it. So, go ahead and repeat it, James, please. I was actually looking at some things on the notebook that you sent, so I wasn't. I will confess, I wasn't totally paying attention. So,
Understood. The proposed budget for the program is on page 14.
right.
And then if the TIDC board approved and Valverde and Terrell counties approved, then we would revert to page 15 budget.
So I guess I'm trying to figure out the wording. Is if our goal is to ultimately hope or be optimistic that Terrell County and Valverde will be joining, then it's sort of a contingent motion. And so my motion is that if that happens, that an interlocal agreement is entered into with Terrell County and Valverde County, that we should approve the budget as presented for that. And in the alternative, if it's not, that you have the board's permission to proceed with the first budget that you've proposed, which is on page 14 of this packet.
Thank
I'll
you.
second
Everyone,
that.
does everyone understand the motion?
I tried.
No, I thought it was good. I just want to make sure nobody else is confused. I understood what you were saying. And we have a second from Michelle Moore. Discussion. Who wants to discuss? Judge Hennington, you've unmuted there.
Yeah, so I can get behind the Del Rio or Val Verde Terrell County joining. That clearly diminishes the cost. If that fails, I mean, I have to go. I have to go on record. I suspect the other judges do. Is we can't unilaterally decide this. I know we're deciding it as the board members here, but there's no guarantee that at the end of the day the budget's going to pass at that. No, we're not going to do this what we did last year. So I'm almost of the opinion that. Well, I guess my question is, how urgent is this first budget today? Is it we got to do it today? In other words, do we have time to get in front of Edwin and Scott before we do this, or is that too far away?
Judge Hennington, I would say that the main purpose of adopting a budget today is because the application for your renewal funding from us, regardless of what happens with Val Verde and Terrell, is due on May 10th. And so there needs to be some basis for that continuing grant request. I think that your direction, based on the discussion earlier, was to make a part of that grant request that TIDC fully fund the new rental costs, which, as Scott said, we can put forward to the board. But I think that that's the reason that there needs to be some kind of budget that would be the basis of the continuing grant request. Your point is well taken that all of the county judges have commissioners courts and approvals through their county processes that ultimately need to take place. And so I think that what's on the table today is a budget plan that would be the basis of the grant request to TIDC. Does that sound right to others?
And I will say this, Judge Hennington, I will work with you on the grant language. You and I have had discussions multiple times about reimbursement rates by the state and the tax base of these counties. The fact that we've got high case numbers and low growth as far as income availability to the counties, to the tax income. And so I'll work with you on language that we can include in the grant proposal. I would certainly welcome, and I think I said this to you the other day, I don't matter to most members of the TIDC board. County judges matter. And so going with me to that meeting and helping make the pitch for the greater contribution, I personally think is warranted. I've worked through the county budgets now for 7 years and my place in them. So I would certainly work with you on that and see if we can go present a good case for it.
Mr. Ortiz?
Thank you, Judge. My question, James, is this, and I know you put it in your proposal. So when you go in front of the board, on page 7, you indicated that you feel that an 80% reimbursement rate would be adequate to fund this, correct? Is that what you're proposing with TIDC in your grant?
That is what I was proposing. I would talk to Judge Hennington about. I ran some numbers with him yesterday, I think, to look at what those differences would be and how that would impact the county budgets. I know, and so that was a number that I thought might make a significant difference, but that was just an idea that I had.
Right. And I think there has to be some kind of expectation for the county judges to understand what you're proposing as it relates to this specific budget, whether or not Del Rio and Terrell are added to it. So I think that's what Judge Hennington is trying to get get forward. And so if we have to pass the budget here today, knowing that it's a renewal, however, I think we have to vote on it today. And then we'll see what we can do depending on what happens at that point.
Well, I mean, guys, it's not, I mean, it puts us in an awkward position because on the one hand, yes, I understand we need to approve it. We approve it. Then it puts us in the position of having to go to our court and saying, oh, by the way, we just approved for me, a 20-something% increase in our budget. And so I guess either way, somebody's pissed off. Because if they say no, and I come back to this group and say, well, we can't do that, then we've got to dial everything down. So it's sort of it's a loser deal for judges, county judges right now. Not trying to be a stick in the mud on this. I totally grasp where we are and why we need to do this, but I don't know what other choice we've got. I mean, I hope Terrell and Valverde will come into the fold and that'll ease the pain. We'll still probably go see TIDC and beg them for some more money, but when will we know? When will we know for Valverde and Terrell County? What's our timing on that?
I think the process would be that I would write the grant application, submit it by May 10th. They would have their board meeting at the end of June, and then I would have a commissioner's court during hopefully the very beginning of their budget workshops to get approval of that. And so hopefully this would be a clear answer in July. I think I can't speak for Mr. Colfax or Mr. Ehlers. I feel like my conversations with TID staff have been positive, but they also can't speak for their board in the end either.
Well, I'm willing to vote for it so we can get this in front of TIDC. This board needs to understand for me, and I can't speak for the other judges, but it's going to be a fist fight in the court. And I've got to now, I've either got to build a case for it and I'd rather everybody be free thinking on this as opposed to me being the only one that pushes the agenda. Judge Evans or Portillo, you got anything you want to add on that?
I would just like to add that I do believe that personal visitation to TIDC by us judges would carry some weight on our plea to receive more grant funding for assisting our communities on this defense, because we don't have the money, especially nowadays since two of my commissioners cut our budget by $500,000. So we're in dire straits anyway.
Yeah, I just want to echo that same sentiment. As a matter of fact, and I don't need to say this in the meeting, but I was going through Alpine the other day and I noticed how much available commercial property there is. And rural Texas is dying. We don't have oil, we don't have gas. I'm currently running on a budget deficit of 10%. We have horrible cuts we're about to make. We cut everything. We haven't had any equipment purchases, vehicle purchases, nothing. And we're going to have to make some tough calls. So, and I know I don't want to sound like I know everybody has problems and everything going around the economy is real. And I sit there and again, no ill intent here, but I look at just the salary of one employee. That's more than my entire office and all the staff and everything that we have to do. So do we need it? Absolutely. Do we have, but then you come to the realization you have a local economy where the median income is $24,500. Compare that to Austin where it's 100,000, or even the Valley where it's 66,000 per family. We just don't have the money. So I don't know how far it'll go. You won't hear me arguing that this is needed. This is needed. We need the expertise. Obviously, these accused, they need to be represented in court. Our thing is just, it's the budget, it's the money, and you can't come back. It seems like year after year and say, we need more money, we need more money, no, we need more money. It's just a tough place where we're at. We're just between a rock and a hard place.
All right, anyone else want to comment or discuss?
I will definitely say we can't afford $300 an hour or 200. But that's what we're looking at.
All right, we've got a motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? All right. All of those in favor of the motion, raise your hand to be counted and say aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 8 ayes. Lower your hands. Nays by same sign. Raise your hand if you're a nay, please. 0 nays. And do I have any abstentions?
Abstain.
Mr. Ellers for the TIDC abstains. All right, the budget passes in accordance with the motion. Now I got a message here that says, Judge Hoffman, you have a docket you need to step out to right now. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I apologize.
Thank you for joining us. I know you're busy and traveling today, so we appreciate your attendance.
All right. Thanks. Good luck, everyone. I hope it works out for Judge Cadena and Valverde and Terrell. That would be wonderful. And I bet it will. I have high hopes. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge. All right, let's circle back to number 5. Do we need additional discussion on number 5, Mr. McDermott?
I don't think so, Judge.
All right. Let's move on then to number 6, magistration and appointment project. Mr. McDermott.
I'm inviting Ms. Holguin to join us for this. I will make the presentation short from my end. We have been working under the Supreme Court, the United States Supreme Court ruling of Rothbury and Gillespie County, which requires representation at magistration under the matter of Texas or federal constitutional law. We cannot provide that. And that means because it's not practical across the region, we can't provide lawyers who are on call, who can be present for these things, which means that we can't do any of the follow-up because we don't know the cases. We don't know who's in the jail. We only get a jail list from Brewster County on a daily basis. Otherwise, we don't know what's going on in the system. Ms. Hogue, intimately tied to that is the appointment system across the counties. Each county is running appointments slightly different. Judge Dominguez is running an appointment system slightly different from Judge Ferguson. Each of the counties has a different way of doing it. And the result is that we end up, for example, Judge Portillo with people in jail for 30 or 45 days before the appointment paperwork is completed and sent to our office. I myself went to Marfa the week before Easter to do intakes for 4 people, one of whom was appointed to us in a timely manner, and 3 had been sitting in jail for 4 weeks before we received any appointment. When we get to many of these jails, and this is then we find out that the jail staff is the one that's picking up the slack. When somebody sits in jail for a long period of time, the jail staff will notice that the lawyer hasn't visited them and work on the appointment system. We have a concern for the long term about tracking, about working with the magistrates. I put in my board report that Judge Ludicky in Fort Davis and Judge Wasserman here in Brewster County are the magistrates who do their jobs most consistently, correctly. And there is a separate problem that Judge Ludicky has had for several years, which is many arrestees for Fort Davis or in Jeff Davis County are taken straight to Huntsville County and then they disappear. And we never get an appointment order. We have had people, and I've gone and looked at Judge Ludicky's books. Every magistration that she's done, I know exactly when it was done. I know what rights were read to them, and I know how it happens, and whether they applied for counsel. I still get people from Jeff Davis County sitting in hospice jail for 120 days before I find out that they exist. They don't even come to me on a jail list when we ask for a jail list from Hudspeth County Jail. The Gillespie County, the Rothbury case was a result of litigation. Gillespie County, that's Fredericksburg, was sued for how these things were working or not working. And then the United States Supreme Court mandated this thing that we can't do. I'd like Ms. Holguin to be able to speak and talk about her idea of what could be done. I've presented a sort of possible budget for that on page 16 of your, or 17 of your board report. I know there are a couple things that are true. One of the things that would make this system work would involve having what is often called by TIDC an indigent defense coordinator who would track jail arrests, who would organize the appointment system, would make sure the appointments happen, would have the authority delegated to them in many counties across the state as the authority delegated to them to actually sign the appointment orders or make the appointments. They can also process the vouchers from the lawyers. I believe that this person could do this wherever they were located, could also do this not only for criminal cases, but for juvenile and CPS cases as well, and track the appointments for there. And I think the TIDC has been involved in juvenile and CPS cases for some time now. And so Ms. Holguin, if you'd like to join us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like James said, my name is Lori Holguin, and I'd like to present the Magistration and Appointment Project to you today. So a quick introduction to the project. Magistrations occur when an accused is brought before a magistrate within their 48 hours of arrest. At these hearings, the magistrate has to determine a few things: whether there's probable cause to detain the defendant, they have to set bail, they warn the accused of their constitutional rights, inform them of their right to appointed counsel for indigent people, and to assist that person in applying for that court-appointed counsel. These are known as Article 1517 hearings, and a defendant's Sixth Amendment right to counsel begins when he or she is brought in front of a magistrate and informed of the charges against him or her. They can request counsel before, during, or after these hearings. For the appointments, in several parts of the Fair Defense Act, a court's designee is given the power to act on behalf of the court. The power to appoint counsel comes from Section 2604 of the Code of Criminal Procedure, and under state law, that appointing authority can be a magistrate judge, a county court judge, a district court judge, or their designee. The Magistration and Appointment Project would be dedicated to improving the magistration process and the appointment of counsel for indigent people, while assisting the counties to stay in compliance with the Fair Defense Act. This plan will reduce the time that judges and their staff must devote to indigent defense activities and enhance the magistration and appointment processes. They'll also act as a liaison between judges, sheriffs, jail staff, attorneys, and clerks. A quick overview of some of the related tasks that this project would absorb would be for magistrations, working with magistrates in their office to standardize their forms and the magistration process, to help build a system to track cases from arrest and magistration through disposition, to stay on top of CJIS reporting requirements, and to identify if there's any breakdown in that process and where it might be. Would monitor jail lists to help keep down any unnecessary costs for jail stays. This will be accomplished by identifying new jail bookings to see if at magistration this person requested court-appointed counsel, because early representation keeps costs down in most cases. And by making sure the attorneys meet with their clients that they're appointed to in a timely manner. If they didn't request counsel at time of magistration, but have been sitting in jail for a few days, we can check back with them and see if anything's changed with their situation, a loss of a job or any other change in circumstance. And to be present at criminal dockets to provide assistance as needed for indigent defendants to apply for court-appointed counsel when they haven't applied at magistration or before they were released from jail. Some tasks for the appointment part of this would be to maintain the current automated system that we've built. I was involved in building it and have been maintaining it for a few years and improving it over that time. But basically it's an automated system for adult felony requests for court appointed counsel, those orders either denying or approving, and who was appointed to that case, as well as magistration tracking for the far west Texas counties. When used properly, the system can track all persons who have been magistrated, all applications for court appointed counsel, who was appointed, and they're able to cross-reference. They're kept on spreadsheets so we can cross-reference to identify any breakdowns in the process, to catch people who've been sitting in jail without attorneys, who have actually asked for attorneys, as well as for record-keeping purposes. Prior to this, I don't know, I don't believe any of our current county judges were here prior, but prior to this, we got appointments from snail mail, email, fax, paper, if someone remembered to bring it over, so we've automated this system and streamlined it to organize that chaos. We would like to upgrade the existing system to include the 205th if Judge Dominguez wishes to get on board, as well as the 5 county courts for the misdemeanor applications. So this would be an automated system. We'd also be responsible for maintaining the attorney appointment wheel for cases where the public defender's office is conflicted, as well as for CPS cases and criminal juvenile cases. I'd monitor the CLE requirements for each attorney on each different wheel, as well as to make sure that attorneys comply with their client visits. And that involves reporting any issues with that to the judge of that, with that jurisdiction. A big one's the IDR reports. Right now we have auditors, treasurers, and even some EMC personnel in different counties who help to submit the required TIDC reports each year. This automated system keeps those records anyways, so it would be easier to gather that information and assist with completing the annual reporting requirements. I think we would benefit with a streamlined appointment procedure for all judges. It would lead to faster case processing and less time taken from the judge and his or her staff. We'd reduce pretrial detention and associated jail costs by catching them early, appointing early, and having representation of counsel if appropriate. We'd monitor the jail population to catch anyone before they've been sitting there for 30, 60, 90 days. I believe it'll enhance fairness and due process in the local, county, and district judicial systems, and help the county stay in compliance with the Texas Fair Defense Act to avoid any costly lawsuits. This project would be a transformative project aimed at improving early representation, keeping unnecessary costs down to our counties, and improving and standardizing the magistration process in these counties in the far west Texas. I thank you for your time, and I'm open to any questions you may have.
I have a ton.
Okay, Judge.
First of all, thank you for that wonderful presentation. And it was packed with information. So the first one is, who enters the information into this system? And the reason I ask is because my concern is in a county like Hudspeth, we rely entirely on the sheriff, and it doesn't happen. I mean, I know, as you know, what we get on a weekly basis is a handmade Microsoft Word table, not very well made, and I don't even know where the information is gathered. It's certainly not being generated by a computer program. It's somebody's entering this information, and not everything has the same info. So my question is, who enters that information? Because Streamline is wonderful and sounds great, but what I've learned the hard way is that so much of it matters on, do we have the right software, and do we have the right personnel entering that info? So that's my first question.
Yes, Judge. This would be done at magistration by the magistrates. We've created, it's all free. It's a Google form, Google Doc type program. It costs nothing. What I've done in the past, especially for Judge Ludicky, the one who's really great at it, she asked me to go down and help train her on this. I just put the links, quick links on her laptop and desktop. So when she's there magistrating, she just double clicks and opens up her magistration form. And if they do want counsel, she knows to double click and open up her request for counsel form. So it would happen at magistration. It would require training by this program to get all the magistrates on board, a lot of follow-up, a lot of remedial trainings and such. And the good thing is, if they're magistrated and they're not on the jail list, we'll know to call and ask.
Okay. And then the one follow-up question is, and I tried to pay a lot of attention, but I may have missed it. But what I didn't hear was any mention of 1622 reports. And one of the reasons why that's critical to me is, up until recently, I sat on the board of the Judicial Commission on Mental Health. And one of the things that we learned there is that even those 1622 requirements for jails to do the initial intake and find out what mental health needs a person has, whether they're suicidal, whether they need medication, et cetera, just isn't happening around the state. I was sort of surprised. I kind of learned that, even though El Paso's a big city in comparison to our small counties, we're still West Texas. We still feel neglected. We are neglected in comparison to the other big cities. But one of the things I was very proud of is that in El Paso, I learned we actually have been in compliance and very good about that 1622 information being taken during the intake. And the reason that's important is because that then allows Mr. McDermott to make a plea to the court to say, my client has mental health needs. Here's a 1622 report, and there's a presumption that they're entitled to a PR bond. Meaning, for the budget folks here, what that means is that's going to be less of a jail cost. That's going to be less cost to the county because it's somebody that can safely be released into the community, and that's going to be the county's going to be freed from the jail cost. So anyway, and so I just think that would be something that it would be great if it could be incorporated. And then the last thing is more of a comment that I think we have a problem is that everybody has a different electronic docketing system. Mm-hmm. See, we can, of that kind of information, we don't need a separate program in El Paso because we have Odyssey, which is funny, right? All my hoity-toity colleagues here hate Odyssey because it has a lot of problems. But as someone who has to live with iDocket, I'm like, well, it's like the Stone Age versus, now modernity. But anyway, so that I think that's the other big issue is down the road is maybe looking at what the docketing systems are and whether we can create some kind of efficiency, at least require, I don't know. I know in Culberson and Hudspeth, we use iDocket and we're pushing really, really hard. The clerks are, I know you guys do. We're trying to push them to get better at generating reports that save us time and that save everybody time so that we can be more efficient in how we dispense with justice. So I've taken up enough time, but I'm glad to hear you're doing this, and I'm glad to hear that you in particular are involved with this project, Lori. I know you're a worker, so you're my kind of people. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Lori, my question is this isn't taking any of the magistration responsibilities away from the counties, is it?
No, Judge, it's more of training and streamlining. If Judge Ludicky has to step out, I know that they have a little standing agreement with our JPs in Brewster. They can go step in for her if needed. It wouldn't be a shock to the system. It would have the same forms. They would have the same process. They could just step in when needed across the board for each other, and it would look the same, I think, is what that plan, what we mean when we said streamline and kind of consolidate it all to look the same.
For myself, I would like to get that training also just in case, because of our remoteness, and Marianne, something may happen to Judge Ludicky and then I could step in.
Yes, Judge.
Thank you, Lori.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
So Lori, this is this is more of an advisory role, not a magistrate role, right? This is a coordination role. Is that what I'm
Correct,
hearing?
Judge. I
Okay.
think the other counties and other programs call it an indigent defense coordinator. They kind of assist, and there would be, things to do as far as the appointments, as far as reviewing attorneys, making sure that they're on their, that they've done their trainings. CPS attorneys need to have special trainings and they're done every year. If they're not, they can't be on the appointment. Well, things like that. It's more involved in that. It wouldn't be taking over magistrations. That's a magistrate function.
I like the idea. I'm part of the modern system, Judge
Yes, sir.
Dominguez, and it's because it comes out of our sheriff's office. I never know what I'm going to get. Most of the time I get a blank form. So it's got a lot of room for improvement. And I think a lot of that's just simple training. I don't think anybody's intentionally trying to change the system or jack the system up. It's just we don't get good information. So Mr. McDermott and I have talked about it. I'm not particularly interested in appointing indigent defense for somebody making $90,000 a year, which is what I had the other day. So anyway, that'd be great. I'm for it. I'm like Judge Evans. I want to make sure it wasn't taking the place of the JP. Okay, good.
So, and at that part, Judge Hennington, I think that relation to the appointment order, we hate when we get these blank forms because they often have no email address and phone number, and this person could find the people, make sure that the form is filled out correctly, can work with the JPs to see what magistrations were done and what was the outcomes, work with the magistrates where improvement is needed, hear from the magistrates where improvement is needed for systems. And so I think there's a lot of these things that sort of can work together.
All right, any other questions? Mr. McDermott, what is it you're looking for? You have this under an action item.
I have on page 17 a proposed budget for such a position, and that I would not, that it would be permission to apply for a grant and work with TIDC to find out even if such a thing could be funded. Obviously, taking into account all the discussion that's happened for the last hour, we know where the counties are with cash. I also think that from what I'm seeing on the ground, there are problems that could really end up costing the counties a lot of money. And this is a thing that I was proposing could happen in order to help stave that off. Also, we cannot provide representation at magistration under Roth Gary. And to me, this is a way that I think that we can maybe come up with an adequate substitute. It costs a lot less than me hiring 2 lawyers just to be running around to magistrations.
I think one thing that no one has mentioned, but Judge Evans and I have discussed at some great length, is that right now it appears there is a risk that at least 4, I know of 4 of the 5 counties that are at risk of liability, being sued by arrestees and inmates for violations of their due process rights. You've got one sheriff who releases people on his own signature in violation of the law, sometimes before magistration, just signs orders and lets them out. You have a sheriff who deletes people from the jail rosters and doesn't turn over their applications for court-appointed counsel, and those people have sat in the jail beyond the maximum sentence for the charge for which they were arrested. We have, I could go on for a while, but what I can tell you is there are potential avenues of financial liability for these counties because this process is still under the control of people who have different priorities than complying with the law. So this first I've heard of this. I haven't been involved in this, but I can tell you it sounds to me like an insurance policy for your counties. It's one way I look at it is if y'all can stop these people from being if you can prevent these things from happening in the future, I think that it protects your counties and your pocketbooks risk greatly. That's all I want to say about that. Judge Evans, if you want to add something, you can, but that's all I'm going to say. He shakes his head. All right. So, James, what motion are you looking for?
I would like a motion for me to apply to work with TIDC, apply for a grant to cover this project, and then come back to the board after discussions with TIDC and board response from the TIDC board.
Yeah, as I understand it, it's just to give you permission to explore this and pursue this. So with that in mind, I move that we give James McDermott that authority.
Second.
All right, I think I heard Judge Evans before I saw your hand, Mr. Ortiz. So we have a motion by Judge Dominguez, a second by Judge Evans. Friendly request, Mr. McDermott, does that need to specifically include approval of that budget on page 17 so that you can go to TIDC with it?
That would probably be better, but no commitment to any county until I got word from TIDC about how something can be funded.
Understood. Mr. Ehlers, do you want to add and clarify anything we need to in that motion?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I can tell you how indigent defense coordinator positions are usually funded, and it's we usually do them on a single county basis, and it's through our step down process of 80% funding in year one, then 60, 40, 20, and then it's full funding by the counties. This is different in that you are talking about a regional solution. And so once again, maybe it's a situation where the board would be willing to provide ongoing funding because it is a regional program as compared to, you know, these positions are usually single county types of positions.
Well, we like reinventing the wheel, Mr. Ehlers.
Well, I understand your needs to go regional, and I also understand the fact that, yes, quite a few of your counties have had problems with appointing counsel in a timely manner, and the various problems that causes.
All right, so Judge Dominguez, I would request a friendly amendment to include in your motion preliminary approval of the proposed budget on page 17 of the book.
Accepted.
All right. So the motion as amended, now I'll entertain a second. Well, Judge Evans, do you extend your second to the motion as amended? Thumbs up from Judge Evans, that's a yes. Any further discussion on the motion on the floor?
One quick question. If this doesn't go through TIDC, could it be done somewhere else?
I will explore that.
Could we get together as counties and do it if we couldn't get it done through TIDC? It doesn't have to be through this body, does it?
No, I just want to get you as much money as I can.
Okay. Well, we're fighting money on one hand. Now we're asking for money on the other. I was just thinking there might be a different way to get that money, but go forth.
Judge Hannington, there also might be something that you can do to work with TIDC where, since it's regional, and I don't know, where y'all might fund like 80% the first year and maybe some ongoing percentage. So, which would be higher than normal. So that might be worthwhile.
Well, I'm all for streamlining what I consider to be the herky-jerky system that we have now. So.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Judge Hannington. Michelle. All right, hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye and raise your hand to be counted.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ayes. Any nays? Same sign. Lower your hands. Any nays? Same sign. No nays. Any abstentions?
Abstain.
Mr. Ehlers abstains, motion carries.
I missed an agenda item, Judge. Of course, you called it correctly and I did not respond correctly. Number 5, I have Mr. Inahos here is the Culberson County Treasurer. We have had issues with cash flow, with the maintenance of my books, with the ability for Culberson County to report the grant expenditures in a timely manner in order for reimbursements to happen. I have had a lot of that has to do with staffing, the lack of staffing in Culberson County and their low county budget. I've had some long meetings with I had a lot of meetings with the auditor in Tom Green County, who's considered something of a guru in the auditor world in Texas, who gave me a lot of advice on how to have things move more smoothly. One of the things that he suggested is that there in many grants, and he's never asked for this because of the size of his county, but in many grants, there is a administration fee added on to the grant that comes from the grantor to pay for the administrative costs of running a grant. Culberson County would use that money to hire a staff person to be dedicated in good part to the managing of the grant that I've got. I think at this point I represent about 20% of county expenditures in Culberson County. So I was doing that as a presentation. I don't know if Mr. Hinojosa wanted to add anything to what I said, but the motion that I'm asking for is just permission for me to move forward and with TIDC to explore what that looks like and how to present that to their board.
Mr. Hinojosa, are you there? Do you want to join in?
Yes, good afternoon. I am here. So as you know, we do not have an auditor. We are moving along very well. We have come a long way, fixed a lot of our problems. But yes, this grant takes up a lot of our time. Back when the grant started, it was, I believe, like 350,000. And now it's a 1.6 million department. It has grown substantially. The work has increased. You know, we do the best we can, you know, because I still have the county here, the county itself to operate. So yeah, I was talking to James and I said, is there any way that the grant can give me an employee? I said to help us with this, you know, approving invoices, you know, invoices come in daily, you know, helping with payroll. You know, there's 12 employees. When we started, I believe there was 5. We've grown to 12. Mileage, you know, it's a lot of work, and balancing the grant itself, you know, balancing the quarters to make sure that we hit the correct line items, to make sure when they do accounts payable that they are using the correct line items. So yes, I do need the help. I went to my commissioner's court, so they did give me another employee that the court is paying pending the grant giving me an employee. So the court's funding her till October. If the grant does give me an employee and it kicks in, then she will transition over to the grant. For you know, the grant will pay her salary and all that good stuff. But I mean, are we doing okay? We're doing okay, yes. But it's just we need the help.
As a note, Judge and board, to that, because of the burden on the county, I carry outside of personnel, outside of salaries, I carry almost all the expenses of the office on my personal credit card and submit them for reimbursement. And so I carry the balances on my personal credit card. I am paying the interest that accrues on those balances based on lag times out of my own income. I know that this is not uncommon in this board. I know for certain that Judge Ferguson does the same. But this is just permission to explore with TIDC how that amount could be added. Nathan Craddock in Tom Green County, the auditor up there, suggested that the standard was at 10% that comes from the grantor. I'm just wanting to make this issue aware and be given permission to move forward with this discussion with TIDC to figure out what I can do. I'm not asking for any expense from any county at this time.
All right, where are we? And what kind of a motion are you seeking at this time?
Motion to pursue a grant administration fee from TIDC.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
Would you repeat that?
Motion for me to pursue seeking a grant administration fee from TIDC. Anything would be subject to board approval after we do this, but I'm not asking for any commitment or monies from my county at this time.
I'm the last person to talk about Robert's Rules of Order, but I'm not sure that you need our permission, but if it just makes you feel safer or more empowered to do so, I so move.
Thank you, Judge, and that is mainly what I'm looking for.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye and raise your hand, please, to be counted.
Aye.
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 It looks like we have 7 ayes. Lower your hands. All those opposed, raise your hand. Anyone abstaining?
I will abstain.
Oh, come on. You could have voted on that one, Scott.
That one was borderline. Like, do I approve of me talking to James? Like, sure, I approve of it.
I need board mandate for Scott to talk to me.
I approve of me talking to James.
All right, the motion passes.
All right, Peer Navigation Project. I've invited to this meeting Anthony Graves and Jeff Burkhart. Y'all know Jeff Burkhart from previous meetings. He's a former executive director of TIDC. That is, he was Scott before Scott was Scott. And Anthony Graves is an exoneree. He has a long history in the Texas criminal justice system that involved a false conviction. In fact, I believe that his release from prison was occasioned in part by a district attorney agreeing to some problems with his conviction and agreeing to him being released. I believe that elected district attorney was Bill Parham, who serves some of our counties right now as an assistant district attorney. Anthony Graves is currently working at the Harris County Public Defender's Office in Houston. And he has got an idea there as part of a separate project that he's working on of bringing into public defender's offices what he's calling peer navigators. I presented some materials in the meeting book that he provided me about his project. I believe the idea is to have people who have been through the system, whether convicted or acquitted, who have been through the system, to be placed in public defender offices to be able to help our clients navigate the system, understand what jury trials are about, understand what pleas are about, understand how to talk to lawyers. And I think that anybody who's on this call to say that can agree that sometimes I'm impossible to talk to or understand. And a peer navigator is a person who can mediate between the lawyers and the defendants and our clients and their families to help understand what is going on, make sure that they're making informed, voluntary choices in their cases. I have told Mr. Graves that I would not be proposing to this board or any of my counties this project if it involved any additional cost to them. I don't know what TIDC's board would do. I don't know what TIDC's staff conversations with him have been about. We would welcome the opportunity to be a pilot project for him. And I will let him speak, but the motion will be for me to apply to work with Mr. Graves in applying for a grant that would fully fund such a position in our office. I don't believe such positions exist anywhere in Texas right now. And And so that, and then my motion would come with the rider on it that if TIDC only funded partially, that wouldn't comply with what I was agreeing to this board for. That if unless it was 100% funded, we wouldn't be able to be able to participate. Little glitch in my speech there, not in the computer. Mr. Graves, would you like to add anything?
Thank you for joining us, Mr. Graves.
Thank you, Judge. First of all, I just want to kind of piggyback on what Mr. Dermott said about my situation, how I got here, but I also want to just kind of, I guess, correct some things. That there was no certain things in my case that they discovered. No, I was actually innocent. And because I was actually innocent, I was wrongfully convicted. I spent 18 and a half years in prison. I spent 12 and a half on death row. Had 2 execution dates, all for something I knew absolutely nothing about. Well, when that happened to me, imagine my frustration and anger. The fact that I was convicted and sentenced to death for a crime I knew absolutely nothing about. I was not even a criminal. But I was upset about it and didn't want to talk. I was mad at God. I was mad at everyone. But then after a while, I started paying attention to what was happening in my life because I knew I was better than this. I never harmed anyone. I was a people person. Everyone loved Anthony Graves, but yet I was going through a criminal justice system. And as I was paying attention, I watched so many people around me that was giving up hope, right? And it wasn't because of their case. It was because they had no one in their life, no one to help them navigate this process, because this process is a maze, right? I know you guys probably don't know how it actually works when it comes to people who've been charged with crimes, but they go through hell. Their family goes through hell. It's not a cut and dry thing. It's not about getting out, finding out what the verdict is, and we move on. This thing has a ripple effect, and it continues to affect your life daily. I've been out since 2010, and it still affects my family's life. It still affects my life daily. So what I did is I wrote a book. I'm a published author called Infinite Hope. I've been crisscrossing this globe, sharing my story. I've spoken in front of the Senate. I've spoken in front of Congress. I've done a lot of work. I've dedicated my life to this here because I understand that it takes a holistic approach to represent your clients. It takes a holistic approach to help someone who's going through the criminal justice system. And that's what I'm bringing to the table today. And how I discovered this was when I got out. There were attorneys that started calling me because they were having problems with their clients. And they wanted to know if I would go and speak with their clients. I agreed. And when I would go in and share my lived experience, everything would change. Relationships become where the client and the attorney were on the same page now. Family members now were willing to listen to the attorney's advice because you had someone with a lived experience in the middle of everything, bringing everyone together, and we was getting the best outcomes in the courtroom. On top of that, the main reason that I think that this is so good for us is that it reduces recidivism. You're talking about taking guys' unique experiences, training them on it, and allowing them to go back and help you with your clients and their family members. You're talking about building relationships while providing emotional and social support to your clients. I mean, I started in Houston, here in Harris County, and the feedback I got from the attorneys here was that now that I am working with a peer navigator, I cannot see myself working without one. Just to have someone to interface with your client, to get them on the same page with you and to interface with their family members, it's been game-changing. So I started here in Texas, but I want to take it broad, right? I want to take it throughout Texas, and I want to take it throughout the 50 states. I'm working with some other organizations right now about how to do that. And so I just wanted to come to you guys and say, look, we have unique experiences sitting on the sidelines that we can train to come in and help us with reform our criminal justice system, and that we can provide jobs and opportunities to that will reduce recidivism and create a profession for our marginalized citizens. So that's why I'm here. I know it works, and I'm hoping you guys can understand this. So thank you.
Judge, if you don't mind if I just say a quick word. this program, so as James indicated, I was Scott's predecessor at TIDC and a former member of this board. What Anthony's done in Houston and Harris County has made a big difference there. And basically our hypothesis is this could make a big difference in other places too. We want to kick the tires on it, try it out with 100%, asking for 100% TIDC funding. But we don't think this just works in urban areas. We think this can work in rural and mid-sized areas in Texas too. And just hoping to give it a chance here in far west Texas. So that's all I got, but I definitely support this program and hope you all do too.
Anyone else want to comment or have any questions for Mr. Graves?
I do, Your Honor. So I worked in, I've known Anthony for many years now, and so have vetted him for just recently for a death penalty case out in Burnett. And so they were set to use him. I also have used some of the exonerees in a similar fashion, and it does make very serious cases go much faster. It helps with communication with the client. It helps the client to understand, because Anthony can come in with this unique perspective and explain it in ways that we cannot, because he's been there. He's been in the cell. He knows how confusing certain points of trial are. And so it makes just a world of difference to use these guys. And Anthony has a really great grasp of the horrors that can go on with trial. So, I mean, it's a great program.
Anyone else? Well, Mr. Graves, we appreciate you telling us your story. It's terrible that you endured it, and it's amazing that you're dedicating your life to using such a terrible nightmare of a situation to help so many other people. So kudos to you for that, sir.
Well, thank you, sir. It's taking lemons and making lemonade. You know, it's making some sense of my life. I didn't have to go through this, but now that I understand why I had to go through it, so that I can let you know that we have people on the sidelines that we need to bring in and help us with their unique skill set to make our system better. And that's all I want to do.
Thank you for that, Mr. Graves.
As I said earlier, this would be a pilot program. I don't think this is existing right now in the formal form that Mr. Graves has been imagining. Initially, at some point when I spoke with him, he was talking about wanting a suburban, an urban, and a rural placement. And I don't know that we get any more rural than here. And so that is why I said I think that all in my mind, I think that all the things he says are true. It decreases, it would decrease recidivism. It moves cases faster, as Ms. Moore said. Hopefully we would be developing some data on some of that if this project happened. But as I said as well, I'm happy to engage in a pilot project conditioned on TIDC being able to fund.
Well, for the county judges in the room, don't let the pilot program aspect concern you. What you don't know is that you've all participated in many of those over the last few years. Brewster County recently got an entirely new digital audio system in the district courtroom that connects Zoom with the courtroom audio, eliminates reverb, eliminates feedback, and now has one of the most advanced hybrid hearing systems in the state of Texas. That was done through a pilot program free. Presidio County, Judge Portillo stepped away, but Presidio County now has a machine set up in South County that allows people to access virtual court, talk to their lawyers, do legal research, and draft papers, all free to the county through a pilot program. We've probably participated in 6 pilot programs that have revolutionized the efficiency of your county's ability to provide services to the poor and indigent defendants and litigants in your counties. This is another step in that direction. I think every one of us can agree that anything we can do to make a difficult situation a little less difficult, I'm not going to say easier, but a little less difficult, and more importantly, maybe a little less scary, because it may or may not change the outcome. But what it does change is the understanding, the stress level, and the appreciation for the system by those people who are forced into it against their will. So that is a pilot program that I think we should all be honored to put our names on and be at the forefront of this process. So, Mr. McDermott, what motion are you seeking?
Just that the board would support it if I got 100% funding from TIDC.
I will use chair's prerogative and I will make the motion that we participate in the pilot program. It does not require a second as chair, so I'm going to ask if there's any additional discussion. Yes, sir, Mr. Portillo, unmute and let's hear from you.
Judge Ferguson and Mr. Graves, having had 25 years law enforcement experience and being a God-fearing man, one of my biggest worries is when I do get an opportunity to meet the man upstairs is for him to point out maybe a wrong that I've done and having judged somebody wrongly. So I just want to say that God bless you. Your reward, where will it be? I don't know. What you went through was horrible, and I wish you Godspeed and good luck to you.
Well, I would just like to say thank you, sir. And I know what my reward will be. It will be written on my tombstone that I was just trying to help somebody. That's all.
Thank you, Judge. Thank you, Mr. Graves. All right, I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor of the motion to support the pilot program, raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Any opposed? Same sign. Any abstentions?
Well, just because it's could involve TIDC funding, I must abstain.
All right, with one abstention. Motion passes unanimously with one quiet, meek abstention from Mr. Ellers and TIDC. All right, let's go back to our agenda. And Mr. Graves, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
If you wish to go, you are free to go with our best wishes for you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Graves.
you, guys. Thank you so much. Have a blessed.
Anthony.
All right.
Okay. Number 9, end of term for Michelle Moore and renomination or nomination of replacement. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. McDermott to talk to us a little bit about what's in our bylaws. Then we'll see if we have a motion, and then we'll see what happens next. So, Mr. McDermott, go ahead.
This is the end of term. If you all know, there is 3 positions that are on 3-year cycles that are staggered. Judge Hoffman is a district court judge with criminal jurisdiction. David Ortiz is a private practitioner who takes court appointments, and Michelle Moore is a chief public defender. Michelle has retired, and her term is up. So the question before the board is, the bylaws say a chief. I was talking to Mr. Ehlers earlier today, that limits us in part because there's a pool of retired chiefs out there that work well, and Michelle has been a valued colleague of mine for more than 15 years now. And I enjoy just about everything that she brings to my professional life. So the question before the board is, the bylaws technically say a chief, and how does the board want to proceed? And I did make, if the board wants to proceed with the current chief, I did make one recommendation that I provided a resume in the board materials for at the end.
Mr. Ehlers, how does TIDC read that? Does that require a current chief, or would that include a current or former?
I'm sorry, I'm looking for the, where's the language?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me right now. I'm sorry. It says chief.
Hang on. I might be able to pull it up here. Membership. Okay, I might be able to share that to the screen. Just one moment. Oh, I don't have screen sharing authority. Mr. McDermott, would you make me a co-host, please?
I have just given you ability to share. That's an old version, Judge.
It is?
Yes.
All right. I show this is 2017. Is there a newer version?
2022. Two section under the members, section 2, termed members, one member to be a person with substantial experience in criminal defense and or engine defense policy and practice. B, one member nominated or one member to be a chief public defender or first assistant public defender of a peer public defender office. I didn't remember that there was a first assistant option as well.
Well, I guess I would suggest if you want to keep Michelle on, y'all could just amend the your bylaws here and just turn it into or a former chief public defender, and with bylaws changed, then nominate her to be a board member.
Can we do that without? Can we do that without it having been on the agenda to amend the bylaws?
I can, under the current version of the bylaws, we can do this virtually with a separate notice.
Okay. So the suggestion would be to table the matter to, and then you would maybe call for a special meeting by email vote.
Yeah.
To see whether we want to clarify the bylaws on the definition of chief, and then wait to nominate a replacement until that process was completed.
That is, yes, Judge.
Well, let's ask Ms. Moore before we jump through all these hoops, whether if she were nominated and asked to stay, she would be willing to do so.
Absolutely.
All right. So I don't know if we need to vote. We don't need to vote to table, but I am curious regarding, we do, and thank you, Jeff. We'll make that happen. I just want to get the feeling for the room. Do we want to table the matter and address our bylaws, or do we want to move forward today on nominating someone for the open position? So let me just kind of go around the room. Judge Portillo, what do you think?
I think if we just delay, we're going to delay as long as everybody's on board. I know I'm on board to just let's expose ourselves a little bit and make a motion, and let's get it done today. We can always come back and amend, or we can include in our motion that we're going to amend our.
All right, sounds like you're making a motion, Judge Portillo, which you have the ability to do, and take that right out from under me. What motion is it that you are making at this time?
Well, and I wish Judge Dominguez was back on so he could give me a little help on creating the motion. So I make a motion as presented by Mr. McDermott with the inclusion that we amend our bylaws at our and have a proposed changes to our bylaws in our next meeting. Will that fly?
I'm a little confused about so tell me what it is you're asking us to do. Are you wanting us to amend the bylaws at the next meeting, or are you wanting us to nominate someone now?
I say we nominate now and accept Ms. Moore.
All right, so you are nominating Ms. Moore to fill a second term in the position that she's currently in, as Chief Public Defender.
Yes.
And if we need to clarify it later, we'll deal with that later.
Yes.
All right, there's a motion. I have a second from Judge Evans. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No, passes unanimously and no abstentions this time. Thank you, Mr. Ellers. All right, so welcome back, Ms. Moore.
I'll send around drafted the bylaws, Judge.
Thank you. We might want to look at some of the rest of that and see if any more of that section needs to be clarified at the next meeting as well.
You will.
All right. Okay. Michelle's been with us for a long time. She's done a great job and we appreciate your guidance. So I'm thrilled to have some institutional knowledge sticking around, keeping us on the right track. Schedule for our next meeting, Mr. McDermott, what do you have in mind?
Well, I've got some work to do. So I think that we do need to have something after the TIDC board meeting. And so I would suggest the first or second week of July. I know it's vacation time and I am in desperate need of one myself.
I can do the third week, but I can't do the first or second, it appears. Well, maybe I mean, it'd be, if you want to do it during lunch, is that what you're trying to do?
I can do it anytime. Apparently my schedule for keeping this during lunch failed miserably.
Why don't you send around a doodle poll or something and let people mark when they're available? This is too many people to try to just figure it out right now.
I will do that
for
sometime at the beginning to middle of July.
All right, so I'm going to pass on that. Let's move on to public comment. We have one request I'm aware of. Jeff Burkhart has public comment to give. So Jeff, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. I just wanted to address something I think really important that Judge Hennington that you had brought up. A slight majority of the states in the United States fund public defense 100% at the state level. Texas is in the minority where the counties are burdened with funding public defense. I'm no longer at TIDC. I'm now with the Texas Fair Defense Project, which is a nonprofit. And when the legislature meets again in January, we're going to be pushing very hard for increased funding at the state level. So if there are any county judges out there or anybody else who would like to take part in that, meeting with legislators, testifying about this, or if you have any advice for us as a nonprofit about how we should approach that. We work a lot with Jim Allison and other folks on these sorts of issues. So would be very happy to work with you and Judge, I think you're spot on. The state needs to step up and fund this. I'm going to include my email address and my phone number in the chat and happy to talk to you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else here who's logged in, or has anyone give notice to Mr. McDermott regarding public comment?
Judge, I have checked my email again and I have no requests for public comment.
All right. Jeff, sorry about that. That was something else. All right. Anyone have anything to address before we adjourn? We've reached the bottom of the agenda. Since we did skip over number 10, I need a motion to adjourn.
Can I chime in real quick since I had the pleasure of coming out to see James, what was about a month or so ago, and got to see his new offices and just wanted to commend y'all for those and putting those in place. I think they are just a very welcoming workplace. I think it helps in terms of recruiting and retaining good employees to have a workplace that they can, be proud of going to. And he has that. And so thanks for putting that in place, and you should be proud of what y'all have going on there.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you for that. Anyone else want to join in before I entertain a motion to adjourn? I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion to adjourn by Judge Evans. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Michelle with the second. All those in favor, thank you very much.
Aye.
We're done. Thanks for giving us your afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.